Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our full authority meeting of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority this Friday, September the 16th. First of all, we shall do our roll call, and I'm going to turn to our clerk, Mr. Baval.
Good morning, everyone. Attendance beginning with Member Beattie.
Yes.
Member Brady.
I am here.
Member Clark. Member Cridlin.
Present.
Member Fior.
Present.
Member Halinga.
Present.
I understand Member Hewson sends regrets. Member Ingrao. And I have regrets from Member Johnson. Member Kaywall.
Here.
And I know Member McKenzie is trying to log in. We'll come back to him in a moment. I see Vice Chair Metcalf. Is that correct?
Present.
Okay. Member Rapley. Present. I have regrets from Member Shurton. Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Steele.
Here.
Member Woodhouse.
Present.
I have regrets from Member Wright. And Chair Foster.
I am here.
Oh, and I see Member McKenzie as well now.
Yep, Member McKenzie, I believe you're online as well. Just to let everybody know, in the room here at Balls Falls today, Member Beattie, Member Rapley, Member Ingrao, and Member Cridlin, as well as a wide variety of staff here today. So I won't go through who everybody's here, but we have everybody here that we need to have here. Yes, and Member Beattie's happy he doesn't have to make his own coffee. I'm going to do our traditional commentary concerning our Aboriginal Indigenous rights. So, the Niagara Peninsula watershed is situated within the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and the Anishinaabeg, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, the watershed is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Through the 2021-2023 Strategic Plan, we reconfirm our commitment to shared stewardship of natural resources and deep appreciation of Indigenous culture and history in the watershed. We do have an agenda in front of us today. Are there any changes that anyone would like to make to this agenda? Hearing or seeing none, Member Beattie, would you move that we approve this agenda? And Member Rapley, could you please second that? Yep. That's been moved and seconded. Anyone opposed to us having this as our agenda? Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict this morning? Hearing or seeing none, we are going to move into the approval of minutes. With that, Member Smith, can I get you to move that we approve both the minutes of the full authority meeting and the full authority closed session meeting from July the 15th?
Actually, Chair Foster, I was absent for the July meeting, so I don't think I can vote on the minutes.
Well, actually, technically you can, as a board member, and you can.
Well, then I'm willing to move it if it's allowed. Sure.
Yep, that's not a problem. Member Steele, would you second that, please? Thank you. Are there any questions to the minutes from these meetings, or from the two portions of the meeting? Hearing none, is anyone opposed to us approving these minutes? Thank you very much. Chair's update. I don't have a lot to say this morning. We seem to be in the middle of election season in and across our municipalities. It's unfortunate, and I mean this with all sincerity. Member Johnson, who is a member of our board, is not seeking re-election in Hamilton, and she has been such a strong member of this particular board and the various committees. I'm hoping we're going to get a chance at some point to thank her for the work that she has done for us, and hopefully she'll be at one of our last meetings that we have coming up. I'm going to just ask the CAO briefly. We do have the volunteer appreciation coming up. What date is that? That's the 21st, I believe. Yeah. So yes, we're doing the volunteer appreciation. Any of you on the board who are available, please consider going to that particular event. It should be very good, and it's great to bring together the volunteers that we do have within the NPCA, and it's a good thing for us to go and show our support of them as board members. Correspondence. We have 2 correspondence items this morning. Can I get Member Cridlin to move that we accept these 2 items of correspondence? And Member Ingrao, would you please second that? Are there any questions to these items? Member Beattie, please go ahead.
Did the provincial government give us any indication on why they transferred responsibility to the other, from one ministry to another?
Through you, Chair Foster, good morning. At this time, no, but just so you know that historically, conservation authorities have always been with the Ministry of Natural Resources. Yeah, yeah. No. No.
Member Beattie, can you put your talking on? If
Sorry, got to get used to that. I was just wondering, it feels like we're a ping pong ball, and it's a bit of a disrespect, I think. Anyway, I wondered why.
Thank you, Member Beattie. Just as an FYI, I think this is a good thing, and I happen to know the minister who this has been transferred to. Graydon Smith is the minister up out of Bracebridge, and I've worked with him a long time. I think he's going to do good with this particular piece of the government being passed to him. Is there anyone opposed to us accepting this correspondence? Let us move on to presentations. And our first presentation this morning is a PowerPoint presentation by Jennifer Shern, the Regional Support Environmental Advisor from Transport Canada, concerning update on Transport Canada's risk assessment study of Upper Welland River System downstream of Hamilton International Airport.
Hello. As you mentioned, I'm Jennifer Sharon. I am the project manager for Transport Canada for the PFAS risk assessment downstream of the Hamilton International Airport. We also work with Public Services and Procurement Canada to do all the contracting work for this project, and Arcantis Canada is the consultant that's been doing the technical work for this. So we have a presentation. I will introduce it and then pass it on to Elham Arbaban, who will be presenting all the technical material. We did this presentation for a smaller group at the Conservation Authority earlier, and they had asked that we come back and do it for all of you. Elham, do you want to pull the presentation up?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, sure. I will just do it. Let me first share my screen and then, okay. Do you see the screen? Hello?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So, okay, let me just do it. Okay. How about now? Do you see
There
it
we
now?
go. Yes.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're just going to go through the background of the project, give you a little bit of information about the history, why we're doing it, that kind of thing, the objectives, where we're at right now in terms of the status, talk about the field work we've done in both the stages 1 and 2, and then go through the methodology and findings for the human health risk assessment, and then the methodology and findings for the ecological risk assessment, and then talk about the recommendations and next steps. So Elham would do that, and then I will talk about the meeting we had with the Conservation Authority and some of the things we had talked about going forward with. So Elham, I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So what are pair and polyfluoroalkyl substances?
Excuse me. Can we eliminate from the screen the rearrange videos instructions? It's an image over top of your presentation.
Oh, so maybe I.
You can do that all on your own, Malcolm. Just hit the.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not sure which screen I. Yeah, is it?
Well, you're good to go. You're good to go.
I'm good. Okay.
Yeah, you're on the PFAS screen now. Can you see it, Elham?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. Okay. So. Okay. So, what are pair and polyfluoroalkyl substances? So these are a group of like man-made chemicals that have been used since 1940. They have various applications, and they used as polymers and surfactants due to their chemical and thermal stability. And because they have both hydrophobic and lipophilic properties, these chemicals are very persistent, highly mobile, and able to transport large ranges, and also bioaccumulate in human, animal, and plants. And in the TQRA, we focus on analysis of PFAS related to the use of these chemicals in firefighting foams. So there are some challenges with the risk assessment of these emerging contaminants. And there are thousands of these compounds that have been identified. The science and understanding on fate and transport of and toxicity of these compounds evolve, and it results in changing regulation and guidance. The risk assessment is usually an iterative process, and the results of the risk assessment are being reevaluated by like refining data, and this usually takes is very challenging. So it's very challenging, and so for that reason, we usually need to collect more site-specific data, which adds to the project timeline and project timelines. So I am sure you are familiar with the project. So there were like 2 firefighting training areas known as FFTA-1 and FFTA-2 at the airport. We know that PFAS-containing firefighting foams have been used in FFTA-2. For FFTA-1, the use of PFAS was not confirmed, and understanding primary pathways that have caused these elevated levels of PFAS in like surface water and sediment downstream of airport, where like the runoff of foams into nearby tributaries during the training exercise that they did, and also the runoff and all maybe like soil erosion from areas with PFAS impacts in soil. These slides show like high-level overview of the project evolvement over the years. The project has been started in 2013, and Transport Canada committed to undertake like a risk assessment to evaluate the risk of exposure to PFAS for human and ecological health in areas that were like upstream of the airport and in downstream, like the area of the Upper Welland River watershed. So this map shows the boundary of the RA area in stage 1 of the work. The RA study focused on the area from the south of the airport property line to just south of Whitechurch Road. And here is a list of sampling programs that conducted as part of the stage 1 of the work. And one of the findings of stage 1 was to evaluate whether the RA area boundary needs to be expanded or not. So as part of stage 2, we collected additional surface water and sediment samples from Welland River main channel. The results of this stage 2 sampling programs show that PFAS were present beyond the original RA area. So the RA area was like expanded to the Lake New Panko. So we divided the RA area into like 3 sub areas, which are shown as green, blue, and pink parcels on this map. We completed several sampling programs from area 1 and 2, as shown on this slide. For area 3, which is Lake New Panko, we use data from other sources such as like MECP and your agency. We also used all of these available data in the risk assessment. So in the next few slides, I will briefly present the human health risk assessment methodology and the key findings. So here is a simplified version of the human health conceptual site model. The main receptors considered in the RA were residents, recreational user, construction worker, utility, and outdoor workers. We evaluated several exposure pathways in our assessment. We assumed residents are exposed to soil, surface water, sediment via direct contact. Also, they drink potable groundwater from the RA area, and also the residents eat local food like produce, crops, beef, fish from the RA area, sourced from the RA area. In the risk assessment, we followed standard methods recommended by Health Canada or MECP for estimating the exposure level of receptors to PFAS in various environmental media. So, and also the toxicity criteria were adopted from Health Canada where it was available. We also used hazard quotient target level of 0.2, like 20% of the toxicity. And so the HQs that were less than 0.2 were interpreted to result in no unacceptable risk associated with that estimated level of exposure. And the additive health effect was only considered for PFOA and PFAS following like Health Canada guidance that was available at the time. So based on HHRA results, we didn't find any issue with direct contact with soil, surface water, and sediment for like residents or recreational users, or like drinking potable groundwater based on the monitoring data that we had. We also didn't find like any concern related to like PFOS vapor from soil or groundwater surface water in the air. But we have found some potential unacceptable risk for like ingestion of harvested vegetation in area 1 and 2, and also ingestion of beef in area 1. We found like several sources of conservatism in our assessment that I'm not going through the details here. However, like considering those conservative assumptions and the extent of the predicted risk, the RA concluded no concern that require like immediate action, but we need to better understand and characterize the exposure pathways we recommended to do. So this exposure pathway, so for this reason, we recommended to do like additional studies to kind of better understand the predicted potential and acceptability. So, and some of these additional studies are like surveys of location of local garden and their proximity to the tributaries, community surveys, doing surveys to understand the location of cattle farming or understanding the food consumption pattern. Also, getting some information on local animal feed sources and analyze some of the animal feed, get some samples and analyze the animal feed, and also collect and analyze some samples for crops produce beef. With regard to potable groundwater in the RA area, all available groundwater data were below the Health Canada drinking water criteria for PFAS. And so, and the groundwater studies suggest that groundwater travel time are very slow, and the PFAS may be reaching wells through the other transport mechanisms, such as through surface water, for example. So some PFAS compounds were detected in a few samples from the airport property boundary. And specifically, PFAS and PFOA were detected in the wells within the RA area. So, given the uncertainty about how PFAS is reaching groundwater in the RA area, as well as considering the evolving PFAS science, we will be doing some surveys of local residents to understand how people use their groundwater. We will also be taking water samples from the wells within the RA area, and we will get some more site-specific information. With regard to ingestion of fish, the RA found potential concerns related to consumption of fish from the RA area. In the risk assessment, we assume that residents that are living in the RA area are exposed to PFAS through multiple sources, not only fish ingestion. There is a fish consumption advisory in place for Welland River and Lake Newpenco. And so the stage 2 recommends reduced consumption of local fish for residents that are living within the RA area. And it's recommended that 30% of MECP number of meals for a general population and 14% for a sensitive population. In the RA calculation, we made the assumption about how much residents ate local fish, and we recommend that dietary surveys of residents to be done so we can better understand the consumption pattern and improve future risk estimates. We also recommend targeted communication to local residents and local fishers. Now let's.
Elham, it's Chair Foster. So we're up to about 14 minutes now. So how much longer is the presentation?
Maybe around 6 minutes.
Okay. I have to ask the members, is everybody okay with us continuing beyond our normal amount? I'm seeing.
No objection.
Yeah, okay, I'm seeing general approval with that. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Sure. So as part of ecological assessment, we completed several field studies to better understand the ecological habitat and receptors within the RA area. Examples of these field surveys are vegetation surveys in fall and summer, and also wildlife survey, breeding bird survey, or fish habitat, or species at risk surveys that we completed. Here is a list of SAR that we consider for the DQRA. And so the SAR were assessed at the individual level, either qualitatively or quantitatively. This slide show a simplified ecological conceptual site model, and this is like the typical complexity that we consider. PFAS bioaccumulate in both aquatic and terrestrial food chain, and the orange arrows show that the possible like pathways from those abiotic media up to the food chain. So wildlife are exposed to PFAS via diet or drinking from surface water or like ingestion of soil and sediment. So the result of risk assessment identified no issues or concern with exposure of plant and soil organisms to PFAS in soil or root uptake of PFAS from groundwater, and also no concern with exposure of aquatic biota like fish, invertebrate plants to PFAS in surface water and sediment. And this was supported with the toxicity testing and benthic community assessment that we did as part of the DQRA. But the EcoRA found some potential concern for some of the wildlife, terrestrial wildlife, from exposure to a few PFAS compounds in soil. And the main source of PFAS uptake for the wildlife was food, like ingestion of plants and soil organisms. So, which means that the results are highly dependent on the location of the soil concentration data that we used. So the RA took a closer look at the variation in soil concentration at different locations, which led us to conclude that there are no concerns for the population of these species from exposure to PFAS in soil. We found some potential concern with the wildlife exposed, aquatic wildlife basically exposed to PFAS, specifically in watercourses in the RA area. And for all of these species, the main source of exposure is again diet. And the main source usually is a consumption of fish. So the EcoRA assumes that, also assume that they get all of their food from the RA area. So given all of these cautious assumptions in the RA, stage 2 recommends that health of community of these species be monitored through like population surveys or identifying present absence of their habitat. Also, we recommend to do some regular monitoring of fish tissue concentrations. When SAR are present at a site, the RA assess risk to these species at an individual level rather than looking at the health of the entire population. So a separate set of calculation was done. For many of the SAR assessment could not entirely rule out possible concern, but did find that these concerns are likely due to the lack of species-specific toxicity values. So again, the RA recommends finding another way to evaluate the health of these species, and through some ecological monitoring and habitat assessment for these species within the RA area. With regard to amphibian and reptile, not many studies have been completed on how these PFAS travel through the environment and food chain to these species, and how the effect of PFAS exposure on reptile and amphibians are. So there was not enough data for EcoRA to estimate the risk to these species specifically. So the same way that we did for the other species. So instead, the risk to reptile and amphibian was assessed by comparing them to similar size mammals with similar diet. So this assessment could not again rule out possible concerns to reptile, and these concerns are again likely to the shortage of data for these species rather than actual risk. So the stage 2 recommends evaluating the health of reptile and amphibian community in the RA. So stage 3 RA work is underway. It will implement the recommendations made in stage 2, including the field studies, surveys of local residents, water well use, farming activity, and food and fish consumption pattern. Also do some ecological monitoring programs. In a stage 3, the RA calculations will be updated to take into account the new information, so we can reduce the conservative assumptions or sources of uncertainty that we found in a stage 2. Stage 3 will also consider new science and understanding that has become available since the start of a stage 2 work, including, for example, the new guidance from MECP. Here are the list of work in progress. So we have done some ecological monitoring so far. We have done bird surveys, amphibian, and habitat assessment. Also, the community surveys were distributed to the residents in the area in mid-August. And we are planning to do some additional field studies from between now and fall. So with that, I will pass it to you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Elham. So we did this presentation for a smaller group at the Conservation Authority back a couple of weeks ago. And following that presentation, we had some discussions about ways to communicate this information, because we understand that there's a lot more concern from the community than there used to be. In the past, we've sent out notifications to people, and there hasn't been a lot of response. After we sent out the results of the stage 2 work in the spring, we did start getting a lot more response, and it sounds like the Conservation Authority has also received a lot more people that are concerned about what's happening. So we had some discussions about that, and talked about ways we can communicate with the general public. Our plan, we don't have an updated communications plan, so we're working on updating that, so we have a clear picture of where we're going in terms of communications. We're looking at possibly setting up a website with the information about the project, so people can access the information that way, possibly town halls. Also have planned to do monthly meetings with the Conservation Authority. If there's updates, that gives us a chance to let them know about any new information we have. And we're also going to continue to try and engage with the City of Hamilton on this work. The work that we are doing is just downstream of the airport. We don't have any, the airport is owned by the city, and they are doing work on the airport itself, which is the source of these impacts. And we haven't had a lot of success communicating with them and getting information about what they're doing. But we're going to continue to try and engage with them and see if we can kind of collaborate on this. So those are the steps we're kind of doing to communicate. So any questions about the presentation?
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer and Ellen, for your presentation. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? Member Beattie.
Yes. Do you plan, or have you tested the fish in Lake Nyapinko in the Bimbrook Conservation Area? Because people are still fishing there, and every now and then I'm asked, what's the PFAS level of the fish? And I thought it all settled to the bottom and we were clear. But as part of this, have you or do you intend to test for PFAS in fish in Bimbrook Conservation?
Yes, there has been samples for that. Elham, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so we mainly started with analyzing the fish tissue samples from like area, maybe I go back to the slide. So from area 1 and 2, we also have got MECP fisheries, like, because MECP also do the monitoring programs for the area, for the fish consumption advisory that they have. So we also gonna get some more fish tissue data from MECP for Lake Neopenco specifically. We also had limited the fish data that we use in the RA for stage 2 for the Lake Neopenco was limited, but now in a stage 3 we are planning to get the fish data incorporate the fish data from the ministry into our risk assessment for Lake Neopenco. But we have plenty of fish samples that we collected from area 1 and 2. And we incorporated those results in the RA.
And the results will be coming to the NPCA, to our staff, and then they can pass it on to the board?
So we have a plain language report, which we have sent out that summarizes all the information about the sampling. There's also, I guess the Conservation Authority has done just surface water sampling. Is that right? And then the fish sampling, we have those results. The report that we have, because we collect a lot of samples on private property, some of the information is private. Like, we can't release information about what we find on people's individual properties. So we're just looking at ways we can provide some of that information, like the specific results as opposed to just the plain language summary report, without providing information that's got privacy issues. So we are looking into that.
I see staff nodding their head over there. You have results?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no.
Are you not able to turn on your microphone? Oh, yeah.
I was nodding, excuse me, through the chair. I was just nodding my head about whether or not we collect water samples. We do collect water samples once per year at Lake Neopenco at the beach. So we have water samples, one sample each year since 2012. That's what the Conservation Authority has done.
Well, I'm aware of that, but have you got the results with respect to the fish from the ministry?
Through the chair, no, we don't.
Could we make an effort to get the fish? Because the people who go to Bimbrook would like to know. And every now and then I get the question, so I'd like to have the answer. If you could get it for me, please.
I think, as I understand, it's just catch and release at the Conservation Authority. Is that right?
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
And the last question would be, when this all started, Canada didn't have PFAS standards. We were using the U.S. standards. Has Canada developed PFAS standards of acceptable limits, or are we still using the U.S. standards?
There are, like, MECP provides the fish consumption advisory for PFAS in their area. So, and there are Health Canada numbers for soil, groundwater, for some of the PFAS compounds. And also with regards to the eco, the standards are from, like, Canada is now limited to PFAS specifically, not the other compounds like the C8 from the octane sulfonic acid. So yeah, so we are using like a combination basically for doing the risk assessment. So when there is guideline and standards from Health Canada or Environment Canada, we are using that. But but PFAS is really evolving science. So there are new information every day, basically. So we are using up-to-date science, and that is the purpose of updating. Like, one of the purpose of the goals in the next step, stage 3, is to update the risk assessment based on the new science and new that has been available in the last year or so.
Thank you. Can I also ask staff to follow up on the standards? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. Member Beatty, Member Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question in terms of, you know, it's a very detailed presentation, and I thank you for that. My question in terms of, you made some comments about the city of Hamilton not participating or not being, not coming back to you for information, and it sounds like there's a communication issue there. And also an action plan going forward. You know, obviously the source has to be addressed, and is that the reason why there's been this lack of communication, or what's happening there? This is of interest to me.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I have to admit, I have I took over this project about 5 months ago. So some of the history in terms of the relationships with the city, I'm not, I wasn't involved in, so there's some complexities there. I have been sending them emails, trying to get them to engage, see if we can find out where they're at in terms of their work on their site. I've got a lot of runaround in terms of like, oh, somebody's not at, you know, somebody doesn't work here anymore. I'll pass it to this person. I'll pass it to that person. I think there's been a lot of changes. You know, like a lot of us, everybody seems very busy. So how much of it is just, you know, changes in staff and people being busy with other things, and how much is, you know, them not sharing? I'm not sure.
So if I could, Mr. Chairman, so what's the answer in terms of rectifying this situation? Obviously, they're a major player in this. Excuse me, and having a, you know, a wall of silence or a veil of silence, or for whatever reason, isn't helpful to coming to some cooperative understanding in terms of us being able to collectively work together to, you know, start some remediation and transforming this issue. And Jennifer, maybe you know, I understand you're in a difficult position to answer that, but maybe Mr. Chairman, through you to members from the Hamilton area, that maybe they might want to comment on that.
It's Mr. Beatty is our own representative, our only one from Hamilton today, and if I'm not mistaken. So, and he's already spoken to this significantly. What I would like to take away from your question, Member Woodhouse, is that we should reach out through particularly our councillors from Hamilton, and if provided, of course, Jennifer, if you're looking for us to help, you know, please reach out to the CAO's office, and we can work through the councillors in Hamilton to try and see if we can get some help if you require it. Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I've taken over it recently. I need to spend a little bit more time trying to, you know, pin people down, and so, and I also need to talk to people a little bit more about some of the history on relationships there. It's a large project to take over, and it's a lot of details, and it's also at a time when there's been a lot more interest. So, you know, I do need to work on trying to increase the communication with them. So, you know, I don't want to imply that, you know, the city has not been cooperative. I think it's just that they've had some changes of people there as well. So I will work on that and see if I can get some more, because, you know, communication with the public, we want to make sure that we have a message that's you know, cohesive between them and us, and that we're not, you know, giving different pieces of information to different people. So I will work on trying to develop that relationship better with the city.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to go to Member Smith next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Foster. I was glad to hear that you're looking at targeted communications with citizens along the waterway. But so if I can relate that to my personal experience, I live on what I would call a toxic waterway, which is the Martindale Pond down in St. Catharines. And I still see newcomers to Canada walking away with buckets of fish. And I have brought this up with other agencies, and the ministry, of course, points to their online fish consumption guides and things like that. So I guess what I'm saying is there another way? The fish consumption guideline, I don't think that newcomers would necessarily even know it exists. People who grew up around here know about the risks of the general risks of the fish being toxic, and you don't consume them freely. My experience is that newcomers see the trees. We live in a beautiful area, and they think that the assumption is that the fish must be clean. So I'm getting to my question now, which is, I have often thought about billboards, so targeted communications with residents along the waterway is one thing, but many people drive in from dense urban populated areas. Newcomers drive to areas that they think look pleasant for fishing and things like that, and walk away with buckets of fish. How do we address that?
So So this is, at this point, Member Smith, this is of course questions to the presentation. So is that going to be a question to our staff about potentially fishing?
Sorry,
or is it
let me modify it then, Chair.
Okay.
I would just say that I salute you identified the targeted communications, and I would just say, please consider it's not just people that live along the waterway that are at risk. People do drive in and take away, from my observations only, large quantities of fish. So maybe I'll just comment on that aspect of the presentation for consideration, because I know that at this point there is no solid answer on that.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, any comment on that?
Yeah, I understand. It's difficult because the way that the ministry communicates is through the fish advisory. So if people aren't following the fish advisory, so when we did the risk assessment, we looked at people that live in the immediate area have increased exposure to PFAS potentially through other means if they're eating vegetables from their gardens, things like that. And so we have said people that live in that immediate area should consume less fish based on the calculations in the risk assessment, but that doesn't apply to people that are outside that don't have that additional potential exposure to PFAS. So if you live outside the risk assessment area, then the ministry fish advisory applies, and there is there can be some discussions about whether that is sufficient to let people know, but that is kind of the approach that the ministry takes to let people know.
Okay, thank you. Member Smith, is that it?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Member Smith. Member McKenzie. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that, Chair. Through you to Jennifer. Jennifer, is the problem with communication, is it with the Hamilton Airport or with the City of Hamilton?
We have provided information to both. And we have had kind of some communication with the airport authority and some communication with the city. And it seems to be more like we'll look into it, and, I haven't heard back, but it's, I would say.
That's fine. Thank you, Jennifer. I think I get the picture. To follow up on that, Chair Foster, I might recommend that our staff or the board communicate with councillors from Hamilton to try to find out where the roadblock might be. I think you suggested this earlier. The councillors aren't available today, but there is, two separate bureaucracies. One is the City of Hamilton, and then there's the Hamilton Airport Authority, and there's also this big question mark of liability hanging in the background, and that's one of the reasons I think that there's possible difficulties in communication. And my second point or remark would be to echo Member Smith's comments. He hit the nail right on the head, especially with new Canadians who see abundant fish resources. And if the Conservation Authority, where most of the fishing may be done in this area, I would like to see the Conservation Authority have signs posted that may reflect what is in the safe guidelines for eating sports fish, and or information obtained from Jennifer's office about the contamination level of the fish and the recommended level of fish consumption. Ministry guidelines, when they publish that, they're not taking responsibility for getting that message out to the individual sites where fishermen come from. So entranceways, parking lots, boat ramps, those are the kind of areas where a property owner such as the NPCA can communicate with the anglers as to what's happening in their area. Thank you very much.
So, two takeaways from your comments, Member Mackenzie. Number one, we will leave the door open for Jennifer and her team to come back through our CAO if they need help with the City of Hamilton or up with the airport. So we will be reactive to them with their study. And secondly, regarding fish and these areas, what we can do, we'll leave that with staff to come back and find out what they have done, and then what else can be done to help with this. So does that sound reasonable, Member Mackenzie?
Very much so. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you. Is there any other? Member Rapley, please go ahead.
I'll be quick. The attachment, I couldn't open it at home, and all the other attachments I could, and it said it was contaminated or something. And even here today, I had the same problem. So I don't know if anybody else had that problem. But the other thing is, I looked in the EPA has reams of information on this topic and lots of detail. And I haven't had time to check, but I wonder if Canada is active in this area or not. And it just needs to be looked into. That's all.
Thank you, Member Rapley. And with that, I don't see any other questions coming in. So to Jennifer and Ellen, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. We really do appreciate it. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of follow-up work with this, with the NPCA, as well as the municipalities of Hamilton and Niagara. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Looking forward to working with you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Our next presentation this morning is from Josh Diamond, NPCA Water Quality Specialist, concerning Water Quality Monitoring Program, Summary Report 2021. Absolutely no disrespect, Josh, but if you can make this a quick presentation, you will be hugged by all of us. So, thank you.
Are we supposed to be hearing something?
Oh, he's just about to start. He's getting himself set up, Member Smith. Okay, we're having a few very minor technical issues here. Give it a try, Josh. Are we good now?
Good morning. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Chair Foster, members of the NPCA board, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to provide you with an overview of the NPCA Water Quality Monitoring Program Summary Report Year 2021. The presentation is a companion to report FA 34-22. Apologies. Why is monitoring important? It is critical to monitor the water quality of the NPCA watershed. Monitoring allows us to characterize the quality of our waters and allows us to identify changes over time. Monitoring helps us to identify emerging water quality issues and identify sources of contamination. The information from monitoring programs can be used to design pollution prevention and remediation programs, and also can be used to determine how effective these programs are. And finally, monitoring allows us to have a better understanding of the impact of spills or pollution discharges into our environment. The NPCA Water Quality Monitoring Program was implemented in 2001. The mandate of the program consisted of two components. The first component of this program was to assess the ambient water quality of our local watersheds. To accomplish this, the NPCA has developed a network of 80 surface water quality monitoring stations throughout the entire NPCA watershed, where the NPCA collects both chemical and biological samples at these sites. The NPCA also has a groundwater monitoring program where groundwater chemistry is monitored at 36 locations. Since 2001, the NPCA has collected approximately 8,000 surface water samples and 400 groundwater samples through this program. It is one of the most comprehensive water quality sampling and analysis programs within the NPCA jurisdiction. The second component of our program is the requirement to report our water quality information to the public and our partners. This is done through our annual reports, such as this, and the Watershed Report Card Initiative with Conservation Ontario and other special projects.
Josh, before you go any further, would you have to oh, here we got it back up again. So, okay, good. You're good to go.
Okay. So I'm on slide 4 now.
Perfect, thank you.
For the surface water monitoring program, the NPCA collects its samples during the ice-free season, March to December, and water samples are analyzed at accredited labs for a whole suite of water quality parameters, such as general chemistry, nutrients, metals, and bacteria. Groundwater samples are collected yearly in the fall and will be described later in this presentation. This table shows the list of key parameters that the NPCA uses for our analysis and our water quality reports. The parameters selected have ecological threshold values, such as provincial water quality objectives and Canadian water quality guidelines. These parameters are both sensitive to rural and urban land uses and are commonly used by conservation authorities around Ontario. Next slide, please. For data analysis, the NPCA takes water quality from 8 indicator parameters from each of our stations and summarizes 5 blocks of data with a tool called the Canadian Water Quality Index. The Canadian Water Quality Index was developed by Environment and Climate Change Canada as a tool to transform complex water quality data into understandable description. Through this tool, water quality is classified as excellent, good, fair, marginal, and poor based on 3 criteria. And these criteria include 1, the parameters do not meet water quality objectives or guidelines. 2, the number of times the objectives or guidelines are not met. And 3 is the magnitude to which the objectives and guidelines are exceeded. So when we apply this tool to the NPCA surface water data at 80 locations, or 80 locations from 2017 to 2021, we can find the following results. And you'll see on the map that's in our presentation, each dot represents the NPCA water quality monitoring stations. 65% of those dots are rated as poor, and those are the red dots. 26 are rated as marginal, those are yellow dots. 8% are rated as fair, the green dots. And 1% is rated as good, which is the blue dot, which is in Port Colborne, Welland Canal. The highest water quality ratings in the NPCA watershed are found in the Effingham tributary of the upper 12-mile creek in Pelham, Point Avenue Drain and Beaver Creek in Fort Erie, an upper Welland River tributary in Hamilton, the lower Welland River in Niagara Falls, and the Welland Canal. Generally, the Canadian Water Quality Index ratings at our stations have been relatively stable when compared to historic data. Next slide, please. Based on the water quality data the NPCA collects, elevated concentrations of total phosphorus and E. coli are the most frequent and widespread cause of water quality impairment in the NPCA watershed. The high frequency and magnitude of these exceedances are the driving factors in lowering the water quality index at all of our stations. In the case of total phosphorus, approximately 90% of the samples from 2017 to 2021 exceeded the provincial water quality objective. Total phosphorus is not inherently toxic, but because it's an essential nutrient, it can overstimulate algae and aquatic plants. I provided in this slide a nice summer picture of Big Forks Creek, where you see the annual overgrowth of algae and aquatic plants indicating the nutrient enrichment. Below that picture, you'll notice a figure which is a dissolved oxygen profile of that watershed from June to October of a typical year, which shows the nutrient enrichment conditions causing large jumps in DO in the spring and early summer, and then, which is due to photosynthesis and respiration, but then a sustained dissolved oxygen depletion as algae and plants decompose. And you'll see a large number of data points underneath a red line on that figure, and that indicates that sustained low DO, dissolved oxygen. So you can imagine that would be quite stressful for aquatic life. Sources of phosphorus include fertilizers, sewage, animal waste, and pesticides. In the case of E. coli, 57% of our samples from 2017 to 2021 exceeded the provincial water quality objective. E. coli refers to a large group of bacteria that are commonly found in the intestines of humans and animals. Most strains are harmless, but some strains can cause severe illness in people, and this parameter is responsible for most beach postings. Sources include sewage and animal waste. Our water quality monitoring program is also detecting a significant number of chloride exceedances, and this is common throughout the province. And so we're noticing this in our urban and where there's a lot of roadways and parking lots, and we're seeing increasing chloride due to road salt application. So we'll be watching that. Next slide, please. The NPCA's groundwater monitoring network consists of 15 wells through the provincial groundwater monitoring network and 31 NPCA wells installed at 23 locations through a partnership for the NPCA and the Ontario Geologic Survey. Dots on this map represent the groundwater monitoring sites in our watershed. Groundwater samples are collected yearly in the fall at 35 wells and analyzed for water chemistry and compared to Ontario drinking water guidelines. Next slide, please. The water quality at most wells meets Ontario drinking water standards, but there were some observed health-related exceedances. Health-related exceedances have been followed up with the Ministry, the Environment, Parks and Conservation, as well as the public health units. These exceedances were found to be attributed to the natural conditions of the groundwater. The NPCA did also find several aesthetic-related exceedances. Aesthetic-related exceedances may not be a source of a health-related issue, but these exceedances make the groundwater unpalatable or otherwise unpleasant for normal use and require treatment. Build up and staining are the common things with that. The NPCA continues to recommend regular water testing and water treatment when using groundwater for drinking. Next slide, please. There are several strategies that the NPCA uses to improve water quality in our watershed. One, the best approach available to reducing non-point source pollution like phosphorus and E. coli is through the implementation of best management practices such as nutrient management, wastewater storage, cover crops, repairing buffers, sediment control, reducing livestock access to waterways.
The NPCA stewardship program encourages the implementation of best management practices by providing expertise and cost sharing for projects for interested in landowners. Another strategy that we employ to improve water quality is we work with our municipal and ministry partners to investigate water quality issues that are identified through our water quality monitoring program. And we're also continuing to incorporate improved water quality data logging technology into our program, which will allow for the NPCA to better track a range of water quality parameters. This will allow for a more comprehensive and accurate picture of the environmental conditions of our watershed. Next slide, please. To support groundwater protection in our watershed, the NPCA has a water well decommissioning program to assist interested well owners with the cost to decommission their abandoned wells. Since 2007, the NPCA has partnered with well owners to decommission 112 wells. Next slide, please. In addition to our routine water quality monitoring program, our water quality team has completed the following projects in 2021. Hamilton Airport Biological Monitoring Study, our Clanbrook Landfill Monitoring Study, our Upper 12 Mile Creek Water Temperature Monitoring Study, Conservation Area Water Quality Monitoring, and our Continuous Water Quality Monitoring Program. Next slide, please. The data collected through the NPCA Water Quality Monitoring Program is very robust and is used by many other agencies and partners. In 2021, the NPCA received 47 water quality data requests. Over time, we've noticed an increased demand for our water quality data, highlighting its importance to our watershed. Data users include our municipality. One of our big data requests recently was the Niagara region that requested water quality data for our Lower Welland River for their South Niagara Falls wastewater treatment plant environmental assessment. Well, we also get requests from the MECP, academics, consultants, and the public. Next slide, please. And this year, we've tried something different. We are releasing, along with this report, this is going to be sort of the front end. This is our new water quality stewardship fact sheet. It's an educational tool to communicate the results of our water quality summary report and identify how the community can take action to improve water quality in our watersheds. It's updated. It will be updated annually. That is the goal, and it will enhance public communication, the results of our study and water quality studies, and provide information on resources and best management practices that can be used to improve water quality in our watersheds. Next slide, please. Chair Foster and board members, again, thank you for your attention and happy to answer any questions. And I want to highlight my colleague, Eric Augustino, who's on that slide. He's the other half of the water quality team, and he's been with us for 10 years, and he's collected a zillion samples, and I just wanted to acknowledge him. And I also want to acknowledge my son. He's probably watching on the TV right now. It's his birthday today, so happy birthday, Travis. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Good presentation. Any questions from any members on the presentation? Keeping in mind we do have a report coming up shortly. Member Rapley, please go ahead.
Oh, there. The Coastal Shoreline Group is doing a lot of monitoring, including even the Niagara Shores area, which we're greatly interested in. Do you receive their results?
Through the chair, yes, we do. We actually sit on the Niagara Coastal Collaborative Committee. I actually sit on the committee, so we're aware of the results that they're finding. We've actually worked with them on a project a couple years ago for Wignall and Beaver Dams, Lorraine Bay, essentially, in Port Colborne area. So yes, we are involved and we are aware of the results.
A little further on that through the chair. The outlet ponds in Virgil are of great interest and concern. They're in the conservation area and with the town. Do you do monitoring on those ponds? Which are, there's a lot of silt and a lot of, we had a site meeting there at one time, but do you actually monitor those ponds?
Through the chair, just a question to Member Rapley. Is that the irrigation pond or ponds in Virgil?
Yes. It's in a conservation area.
Yeah, okay. Yes, we About 4 years back, we implemented a conservation areas water quality monitoring program. So we take quarterly water samples from our conservation water features. So that's sort of a new program we've implemented, but we're trying to get data on our actual conservation areas as well. And so that is definitely one of the areas. And we've also taken some stream or sediment samples as well when there was an accidental discharge of those reservoirs.
Oh, excellent. And the last thing is, these are of great interest right now in Niagara-on-the-Lake, is the older sewage lagoons, which are now finished, are under the region to be cleaned up, but they're also part of the Department of Defense and Parks Canada and potentially town and potentially NPCA park eventually. And the Harmony Group, which is the local residents, I'm on their board, and they would like to know if there's any testing of those older sewage lagoons and obviously the sediment there, because in theory they were set up to be restored, you know, and the region's working on that. So perhaps the region does testing, but we're not doing testing because of it's under the region. But do we get results from that, or can we find out what the status is of those old sewage lagoons? And this was at our board meeting on Tuesday night, the Harmony Group.
Through the chair, I don't have those results, but I can talk to fellow staff and see if the results have been circulated internally, and if not, I can certainly talk to our region partners and see if those are available. We actually have a water quality monitoring station on Lakeshore Road just upstream of that site, from the sounds of it.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rapley. And to the presentation, Member Mackenzie. Can't hear you again.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Through you to Josh, are there monitoring stations on 40 Creek, specifically above and below the escarpment? Thank you.
Through the chair, we have one monitoring station. It's a provincial water quality monitoring station downstream on 40 Mile Creek on Olive Street. And that's been with us since 2007. 2007, I think, we've been monitoring that. There was some sporadic monitoring on top of the escarpment, but we don't have a permanent station.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mackenzie. I have Member Woodhouse, then Member Halinga. Member Woodhouse, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find this very interesting, and it's wonderful that we're getting all this data and expanding our knowledge through collection of data, which obviously is happening here. My concern gets back to what Member Smith had mentioned earlier, I think, which is an extremely important part of what our role here is as board members, and that is to effectively communicate with the general public. And I know we're effectively communicating through electronic media, et cetera, and I live on Beaver Dams, Lake Gibson area, and OPG has actually put some signage up about contamination of fish, et cetera, and some guidelines in terms of what people should or shouldn't be doing with it, which I think is very progressive. We do all these monitoring of all these locations, and we find all these situations, and but unless you're really into this, how is the general public ever to know? And this is fantastic work. This is important work that's being done, yet nobody knows about it. And I think that to Member Smith's comments, some kind of signage on these locations indicating, what the actual status is and what improvements are monitored every year, and how these changes have impacted those standards or those findings. And I think I would like to see something along the lines of how are we going to effectively communicate. If somebody walks up to a well-known fishing hole, for example, and we're monitoring those conditions, we should have something there for for people to be aware of the fact, first off, that we're monitoring it and that there's a lot of work going on by a lot of people that are doing some really important stuff. And at the same time, the general public has some assurance that what the results are visible in front of them. And I think that would be very helpful to get back to Member Smith's comments. I mean, he can talk about it in more detail, I'm sure, but it seems to me to be a very valid and closing the loop for our communication efforts with the general public, which, we've been doing a lot of positive work on that in the last number of years. And I think this could be an extension of that and actually going, completing that cycle for the general public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Member Woodhouse, and again, reminding we're keeping questions to the presentation, but I'm going to go to Director Yates because you came up with a number of differing things that you mentioned with that, Member Woodhouse. So go ahead, Director Yates.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. One of the things we tried this year is the stewardship fact sheet as a first step in broader communication with the public, and that is appended to the report that's before you today. So our intention is to have that available on our website and distribute it to our municipal partners and have it available to the broader community. But we see that as a first step in looking at a broader communication strategy around our water quality monitoring program. And the suggestions you made today are very good in terms of potential signage and other methods that we can better communicate the results in more plain language for the public to understand and to have it readily available to them.
Thank you, Director Yates. Anything else, Member Woodhouse? Good.
No, I thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. And I know I went a bit beyond that, but I think this is really an opportunity for us to actually move forward with this. So thank you for that, and I appreciate the comments.
Great, thank you. Member Halinga.
Thank you, and through you to the presenter, Jason, I picked up on the fact that you've done monitoring on Lorraine Bay and the outlet from the Wignall Drain. And full disclosure, my property drains through the Wignall Drain to Lake Erie as well. And a few years ago, the NPCA assisted with the construction of some sediment basins on the northern reach of the Wignall between Killaley Street and Highway 3. Are we monitoring Lorraine Road or the Lorraine Bay for continual improvement? And along that same line, just upstream of those sediment ponds is a fairly significant, and it's provincially significant, wetland through which the furthest reaches of the tributary drain and then get a bit of filtration before they reach Highway 3. And I'd like to ask, actually, if Lorraine Bay is not continually monitored, that be added.
Thank you. Josh, any comments?
Sure. Through the chair, the NPCA does not monitor Lorraine Bay in Lake Erie. Our monitoring stations on Lorraine Bay and Wignall in particular are right at the outlet, the last roads before it goes onto private property and discharges to the lake. So we're right at the water control structure on Wignall. We do not monitor monthly and are regular monitoring the sort of the upper portions of Wignall, but we have 2 years ago we did an extensive monitoring of nutrients throughout the entire watershed. So we do have some of that information. We could consider looking at that. We have to just kind of look at the resources that are available for us in terms of whether or not we can expand monitoring into, upper tributaries and so on. But there's certainly not a bad idea if there's a restoration project that was formally done there. We can certainly look at that, and I can talk to staff involved in that. We have done that kind of work in the past.
Thank you. Member Halinga?
Yes, I could almost see the sediment ponds from my house, so I know they're there. It wasn't so much a request to do continually monitoring, but even annual sampling at the outfall structure and maintenance of a table of quality would be sufficient.
Can staff take that away as something they'll look at along with the rest of the program, Member Halinga?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Member Rapley, second time.
The Ontario government used to produce a document that told you every lake and every area in Ontario and how big, what size fish recommendations they would have and everything. And they produced it every year. It used to be in the beer store and readily available to people. And of course, that has gone, unfortunately. The other thing is that the Niagara Remedial Action Committee, and Natalie Green is the chair of that, and it comes through here, have done a really good job on the Niagara River. And that committee, 30 years of activity and everything, produced pretty good information for the public on fish and sizes and fishing activity. And it seems that the Niagara River is in much better shape than we realized, you know, and there's lots of major fishery there. So that, you should take some credit for that. I'm on that committee for quite a few years, not as a board function, but as a public rep. And I think they're doing a nice job along the Niagara River in telling you, you know, what fish there are and what you can, how big a fish you should be eating and all that type of thing. And they're very proactive with the public, really good programs.
Thank you, Member Rapley. Seeing no more questions, thank you very much, Josh. Very much appreciated this morning. I'm going to ask Member Mackenzie to move and Member Woodhouse to second that we receive the two presentations this morning.
So move.
Seconded.
Thank you. Anyone opposed to us receiving these presentations? Thank you. There are no delegations this morning. We do have two consent items. Does anybody wish to speak to any of these items separately? If not, can I get Member Steele to move the, Member Mackenzie, please go ahead. Do you wish to speak to it, to vote on it separately, or do you wish to just have a question on one of the?
Yes, Chair Foster, I believe one of the consent items has to do with communications with City of Niagara Falls about a MZO.
Okay.
Am I in the right part of the agenda?
Yes, you are. Normally we will take these both as consent items. Do you just have a question to it, or do you wish to vote on it separately?
I just have questions of staff.
Okay, great. So we'll take these both as together. So can I get Member Halinga to move that we accept these two consent items? And Member Smith, would you second that, please? Thank you. So Member Mackenzie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, could staff tell me the difference between what's referred to as Hurricane Hazel flood lines and the normal 100-year storm flood lines?
Yes, thank you. Steve is here, so please go ahead.
Thanks for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. And so the 100-year flood lines are typically generated by approximately 4 inches of rain falling over a period of 12 hours. Okay. So 100-year, 4 inches of rain over 12 hours, approximately. The Hurricane Hazel flood lines are generated by 11 inches of rain falling over a period of 12 hours. So approximately 3 times the magnitude.
Okay, thank you. And my next question what is the size of the land area involved with this possible MZO, the golf course?
Go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. The land area that is to be developed, sir, I just want some clarification.
I think City of Niagara Falls is going after the MZO, right? So I guess the question is how much property is involved under their request for an MZO.
Mr. Chair, if you give me just a couple minutes, I'll look that up for you.
They're looking that up for you, Member Mackenzie. So any other questions at this point?
Well, I just being curious when I've been reading this and the history of MZOs, because they're not given out willy-nilly. I was taken by the fact that a municipality was requesting an MZO for a golf course. I mean, I can understand one for maybe a housing development or a critical infrastructure, but for a golf course, I was surprised. That's it. And staff can get back to me later, Chair, on the size of the area that's involved. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll get that later in the meeting. It just from my experience, a Member Mackenzie and sitting this term of council at the region, this is the second municipal-driven MZO request that I have seen. The City of St. Catharines had started a process for an MZO in and around their industrial land pieces in St. Catharines, so I don't think it ever got to anything official because there had been an OLT ruling that was in favor of the city. So anyway, I don't know why Niagara Falls is going this route either, but they are doing what they are doing. So
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this point? Seeing none. Anybody opposed to us receiving these two consent items? Thank you very much. Discussion items. We are going to move into our first report, which is the contract award for SkyComp Solutions, Inc., Consulting and Professional Services and Information Technology. Director Gagnon, do you have any comments on this?
To you, Chair Foster. The report is self-explanatory. There's a section spelling out the history of the issue in particular. We were needing to go to market to evaluate whether the IT managed services that we've been benefiting from are in line with market rates, and they are. Certainly there's a provision in there as well, just to call attention to it, of an escalation year over year in line with CPI, and it's tied to the Bank of Canada rate, so there's an impartial party in there. Staff is recommending that we move forward with this, with the incumbent who was the successful proponent. If there are any specific questions related to procurement, Eric Gervais is on the line and is ready to speak to them.
Great, thank you, Director Gagnon. Can I get Member Cridlin to move that we accept this, and Member Metcalf, would you please second that? Thank you. Any questions to this report? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed to us accepting this report? We're good, thank you very much. Let us move on to our second report, which is a follow-up to the presentation earlier. It's report number FA 3422 concerning Water Quality Monitoring Program report for the year 2021. Member Smith, can I get you to move this report? Member Rapley, could I get you to second that, please? Thank you. Are there any questions to the report that you have, and back to staff? Member Mackenzie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Again, an excellent report. I wish to mention that I would always encourage a stronger emphasis on the use of green infrastructure So much of the water that our waterways receive comes off hard surfaces, whether that be buildings and especially roads and parking lots. And as I travel through the community, I do not see steps being taken to install green infrastructure at the design level or the implementation level. And installing them at the design stage, I think is quite economical considering the costs that this overland flow causes to the detriment of our water quality. So I would continue to stress to all parties, whether they be government or private, to invest in green infrastructure to help our water quality and also a way of reducing the threat of floods. And that is the main thing I wanted to mention from this report, and the fact that the water quality through so much of Niagara is poor. This is something that, from a budgeting point of view of the Conservation Authority and our funding partners, has to be kept in mind. We just can't continue to ignore these poor water quality ratings. Water is life. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Member McKenzie. Any other? Please go ahead, Member Cridland.
Thank you, through Chair. And again, just want to commend staff on the standalone report that we now have as a communication tool. This has probably already been going to be done as well, but just going out to our partner organizations as another level of communication with this important data. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Cridland. This has been duly moved and seconded. Is there anyone opposed to us approving this report this morning? I do not see anyone or hear anyone. So with that, we shall move on to our third discussion item, which is the Law Crushstone Quarry Joint Agency Review Team Memorandum of Understanding. Can I get Member Ingrao to move that we put this report on the floor? And Member Steele, would you second it, please? Thank you. Any comments from staff? Director Yates?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. The report before you today is seeking your guidance and endorsement for signing on to the JART agreement for this particular quarry, because it is located adjacent to the Wainfleet Bog, and we wanted to ensure you understood that we will be wearing sort of two hats during this process and commenting from a technical advisory, regulatory perspective, but also from a landowner perspective. We're involved in other JART agreements with other aggregate applications, but this one is unique in the sense that we're also an adjacent landowner. So that's why we brought this report forward to you today. And myself and David Deluce, Senior Manager of Planning and Development, are available for any questions you have.
Thank you, Director Yates. Is your hand now up again, Member McKenzie, or is that a leftover hand?
No, it's my right hand.
It's your hand again. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, Member McKenzie.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to staff. Does this new quarry proposal have a potential to lower the groundwater levels in the Wainfleet Bog? And I mention that especially because I understand that there's studies and discussions about water levels in the bog going on now. Thank you.
Member Yates, or Director Yates?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're currently reviewing the first submission, technical information. That conclusion has not been made. However, we do have our technical hydrogeological staff reviewing the application to look at those types of impacts as a result of the application.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Member McKenzie. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed to us approving this report? Let us move on to our committee reports. And although we had the governance committee yesterday, we won't be seeing those notes until our next meeting due to the timing of that. We did have a finance committee meeting from July the 27th, and there are both open and closed minutes for that. So can I ask Member Mackenzie to move that we accept the open and closed minutes from the Finance Committee from July the 27th? And Member Whithouse, would you please second that?
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
So
you.
moved.
Thank you. Are there any questions to staff on, or any questions to these minutes? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed to us accepting these minutes? Thank you. We have no motions this morning, and is there any notices of motion that any members would like to bring forward this morning? Seeing none, we're going to move to new business. We have, sorry, just a second. I have Grant asking me something here. That would have been approved with the minutes. Oh, okay. There has been a request from staff because there was a minor change to the report FA 3622, the 2023 budget planning and timelines. So there's a request from staff that we approve that as well. So Member Smith, can I get you to move that we approve that report? And Member Mackenzie, can I get you to second that, please? Is there anyone?
Second.
Yep, thank you. Is there anyone opposed to us accepting the budget planning and timelines report? Hearing none, there you go, Grant. Grant is now a very happy scriber to my left here. We're down to new business, and let us start with our CAO, Chandra Sharma, and the latest and greatest from the NPCA. Please go ahead, Chandra.
Thank you, Chair Foster. I have a few updates here. I would first like to start with expressing our deep sympathies to the family that was affected by the tragic incident at our Binbrook Conservation Area over the past long weekend. Our hearts and prayers go out to the family who lost a child. The incident was handled by Hamilton Police, and NPCA staff have fully supported the investigation. I also want to acknowledge NPCA staff, Director Christie, Park Superintendent Mike Boyko, and his team, including Tom Salmon, Nolan Harrington, and McCollum Barrett for their professionalism and prompt actions in dealing with these challenging situations. Over to other updates now. Let me first say that the Conservation Authority Act transition requirements are progressing really well. This week, related to programs and services, we met with 2 municipalities, and there have been other meetings over the past month with other municipalities. We are also progressing really well on the budget side. As you know, levy regulations were released by the province, and the transition timeline to align our budgets with the levy regulation is 2024. However, we are so far advanced and doing so well that our team is planning to transition our budgets this year for 2023 budget, so we're working on that. My next update is related to NPCA's Indigenous engagement and collaborations. We are really pleased to share our partnership with Niagara Folks Art Festival. We are hosting a 3-day Indigenous-led program in the spirit of reconciliation leading up to September 30th. A series of events will be hosted at Balls Falls Conservation Area from Friday the 23rd to Sunday the 25th of September, including guided 2-row hikes led by Elder Dave LaBay, alongside NPCA staff on Friday and Sunday evenings. On Saturday afternoon, Fuse Lacrosse will be hosting 2 sessions on the cultural roots of lacrosse and values of stick making. The event will culminate in the evening with an Indigenous Stories by the Fire event. Really pleased that this is happening. I know some of our board members were requesting this type of work for NPCA to do, and I really thank staff for expediting this and making it happen through external funding. More information on tickets for this event can be found at the NPCA event page, and funds generated through this event will go towards furthering Indigenous programming across the watershed. We are also looking forward to hosting the 48th annual Balls Falls Thanksgiving Festival with over 150 craft, gourmet food, artisan, family, market, and craft food and beverage vendors. Festival will feature daily heritage demonstrations in the village, guided nature hikes, birds of prey show by Canadian Raptor Conservancy, and more. Tickets are again on sale online, and we look forward to the return of a full festival experience this year after 2 years of COVID pandemic. NPCA staff have been doing really and exceptionally well in raising funds for our important watershed work in the community. Over the past few months, we have received confirmation on several successful funding grants, approximately $500,000. And that's really, really exceptional, and I commend staff for just going after everything and making it a priority among all the other priorities that we are delivering on these days. $100,000 through FedDev, through Niagara Tourism Relief Fund, $79,000 for Government Ontario through Reconnect Ontario grant program, approximately $250,000 federal funding for projects related to Niagara River RAP, Remedial Action Program, $150 to build capacity under the federal $2 billion program for tree planting. So that's really commendable. Finally, the Great Lakes Forum is happening in Niagara from September 27th to the 29th, and the IJC International Joint Commission Water Quality Board meeting is being hosted on September 27th in the morning. Chair Foster, myself, Director Yates, and Natalie Green, who is our project manager for the Remedial Action Program, will be participating and delivering presentations. There's also a public forum on September 28th, led by IJC. And NPCA is hosting a Beyond the Falls bus tour to showcase some of the restoration work we've done in the watershed. And this bus tour, I should say, is sold out right at this point. So we're really pleased to be participating in all these important events, and there's a lot of work happening at the NPCA. Thank you, Chair Foster.
Thank you very much, Chandra. There is no report from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Foundation. Member/Councillor Cridlin and I were discussing earlier, and so there's nothing to come forward at this point in time. There will be a meeting coming up shortly for the foundation. Anybody else have any new business they wish to bring forward this morning? Member Smith.
Just a quick question. How does a citizen, I had a citizen ask me, how do they report if they think they have an endangered species living on their property? They would like to report it to the right ministry. I'm wondering if anybody can help me on how to answer that email.
That's a good question. Do you want to take a shot there, Director Yates?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As a first point of contact, they can contact us and we can direct them to the appropriate person at the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks that would deal with endangered species and the identification of it. So
okay.
through me, Member Smith, if they would like to make a direct contact.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Member Smith. Member Woodhouse.
Excuse me, just to add to that, Mr. Chair, if you go on the website of Endangered Species of Ontario, or endangered or at-risk species, there's actually a connection within that site where you can contact the officials and officially register what they believe they have, and they will validate it and include it as part of their inventory. So that's another source. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Whithouse. And by the way, yes, it was great seeing you last night here in Lincoln. Any other new business from any members? Seeing none, we do have a closed session. So we do have to go into closed session for the first two items, as we're going to be receiving a verbal update on those two, but we don't necessarily have to discuss item B that's under 14B. Does any members of committee wish to discuss 14B? What's that? Okay, I don't see anyone requesting that. So we will go into closed session and deal with 14A, number 1 and number 2. So with that, we will prepare and get ourselves prepared for a closed session. Thank you. Oh, sorry, we do have to have a motion for that. Member Beatty, would you move that? And Member Rapley, would you second that we go into closed session for those items? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, we are now going to go into closed session. Back live. So we do have two motions coming out of closed session. First of all, we do need a motion to accept the information provided concerning litigation and potential litigation, and the verbal update concerning number 161 Princess Street and number 200 John Street East and 588 Charlotte Street, both in the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake. Member Ingrao, can I get you to move that we accept that? And Member Mackenzie, can I get you to second that, please? Yes. Yep, very good. Any questions to the motion? Anyone opposed to us receiving these? Seeing none, our second is an approval motion that we have to do. So the approval motion is going to be put up on the screen for you by our trustee, Mr. Bival. There we go. So the motion is as follows. That report number FA 3722, Re-OPSU Collective Bargaining Agreement 2022 to 2024 be received. That the Board of Directors endorses the Finance Committee's approval of the collective bargaining agreement between the NPCA and OPSU Local 212 2022 to 2024. And further, that the Board of Directors approves the negotiated amendments of the collective agreement to be applied to non-union employees in the areas of vacation, statutory holidays, benefits, mileage, uniforms, and wages in order to afford non-union employees the same benefits and to avoid wage compression. I'm going to ask Member Halinga, could you please move that we accept this? And Member Smith, could you please second this? Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to us making this approval? Thank you very much. With that, we have come to the point of adjournment, and so I am going to take chair privilege, and I'm going to say this meeting is adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.